For 10 long years, a German Shepherd waited in a shelter. He watched thousands of dogs come and go, while he remained behind, always overlooked. The shelter staff started calling him the forever dog, the one who never gave up hope despite countless disappointments. But what happened on that rainy Tuesday morning stunned everyone who knew his story. This incredible tale of loyalty, patience, and an unexpected reunion will leave you speechless and remind you that some bonds truly transcend time and circumstance. Get ready for a journey that redefines what it means to have faith in a promise made long ago. The Highland County Animal Shelter was usually quiet on Monday mornings. Most adoption events happened over the weekend, leaving staff to clean kennels and catch up on paperwork as the new week began. In the last kennel of the East Wing lived an 8-year-old German Shepherd named Kaiser. "Good morning, old friend," said Rachel, the shelter's longest-serving caretaker, as she approached with breakfast. Kaiser rose slowly from his bed, tail wagging gently. Unlike many long-term shelter dogs, he showed no signs of kennel stress. No pacing, no barking fits, no signs of depression. Instead, he carried a quiet dignity that both impressed and broke the hearts of the shelter staff. Kaiser's file was thicker than most. His intake photo showed a frightened 2-year-old dog, ears pulled back, body tense. The brief history noted he'd been found wandering near a highway. No microchip, no collar. What made Kaiser's case so unusual was how well-trained he appeared. He responded to basic commands, walked perfectly on a leash, and showed impeccable house manners during overnight tests with foster families. And yet, year after year, Kaiser was overlooked. Puppies and younger dogs were adopted quickly, while the handsome shepherd remained. He wasn't unfriendly. In fact, quite the opposite. Kaiser greeted every potential adopter politely. He sat calmly, offered a paw when asked, but something in his demeanor suggested he was waiting for someone specific. "I don't understand it," Rachel often told new volunteers. "It's like he's interviewing the adopters, not the other way around." Over time, the shelter staff developed a theory. Kaiser had belonged to someone once, someone he deeply loved, and despite all evidence to the contrary, he was waiting for them to return. Rachel had seen it before. Dogs so bonded to previous owners that they struggled to connect with new families. Usually, with time and patience, they adjusted. But Kaiser was different. He was perfectly pleasant with everyone he met, but that final spark of connection never ignited. Today marked 8 years since Kaiser's arrival. The milestone wouldn't go unnoticed. Rachel had brought a special breakfast, scrambled eggs mixed with his regular food, and a new plush toy. Small celebrations for a dog who'd spent the majority of his life in a concrete kennel. "You're still waiting, aren't you?" Rachel whispered, as Kaiser gently took the toy in his mouth. His brown eyes met hers, with an intelligence that always caught her off guard. "I wish you could tell me who you're looking for," she thought. As if in response, Kaiser carried his new toy to his bed, placed it carefully beside him, and looked toward the kennel door, the same direction he faced every day. Watchful, patient, as if expecting someone to walk through at any moment. Rachel sighed, making a mental note to feature Kaiser again on the shelter's social media pages. After 8 years, hope diminished with each passing month. German Shepherds typically lived 9 to 13 years. Time was running out for Kaiser to find his forever home. What Rachel couldn't know was that just 30 miles away, a chance encounter was about to change everything. Marine Staff Sergeant Michael Reeves clutched his coffee, staring out the window of his brother's house. He'd been back on American soil for 2 weeks after 12 years of service, and civilian life still felt foreign. The nightmares hadn't subsided, and the doctors at the VA had warned they might not for some time. "You should get a dog," his brother Dave suggested. "Not for the first time. Service dog, companion, whatever you want to call it." Michael didn't respond. There had been a dog once, his military working dog, a German Shepherd named Koig. They had served 2 tours together, Before Michael's third deployment, Coig had been deemed too old for field work and retired. Michael had arranged for his parents to adopt him, but they died in a car accident while he was overseas. In the chaos and grief that followed, Coig had somehow been lost. Michael's inquiries had led nowhere, and eventually, his commanding officer had gently suggested he focus on his mission. There's a shelter nearby, Dave continued, undeterred by Michael's silence. Highland County. Friend of mine volunteers there. Michael ran a hand over his close-cropped hair, now gray at the temples despite being only 38. I'm not ready, he said finally. Dave nodded, dropping the subject. But later that day, while Michael napped, he sent a text to his friend at the shelter. Any good German shepherds there? Brother's a Marine. Could use a companion. The response came quickly. We've had one for ages. Nobody adopts him. Sweet dog. Just waiting for the right person. Dave stared at the reply, contemplating his next move. His brother had been through hell, and while he respected Michael's boundaries, he also knew when a push was needed. After a moment's hesitation, he typed, Can I bring my brother by tomorrow? Just to look? That evening, as they ate dinner in near silence, Dave casually mentioned he needed to drop something off at the animal shelter the next morning. Thought you might want to get out of the house. He added, just a quick errand. Michael studied his brother's too innocent expression. This about a dog again. Just a ride, Dave insisted. No pressure. As Coy completed his inspection of the house, he settled beside Michael's feet with a soft huff, his body finally at rest after a decade of vigilance. Michael leaned back on the couch, his hand resting on Coig's back, feeling the slow, steady rhythm of his breathing. I never thought I'd see him again, he said quietly. Dave, sitting nearby with a beer in hand, simply nodded, sensing that words weren't really needed anymore. That night, the rain returned, heavier now, drumming against the roof in a relentless rhythm. But inside the house, the atmosphere was calm, warmth emanating from the fireplace, a silent understanding filling the space between man and dog. Michael didn't sleep in his bed that night. Instead, he laid a blanket on the living room floor and curled up beside Coig. Just like he had in dusty tents across foreign lands, the dog responded by shifting closer, his head resting on Michael's chest, his body pressing into his handlers like he was making sure he was real. Morning came slowly. The rain had washed the world clean again. For the first time in years, Michael awoke without the weight of his nightmares. Coig was still there, his tail thumping gently against the floor the moment Michael stirred. They fell into rhythm quickly. Over the next few days, Coig settled into his new old life with an ease that surprised even Rachel when she came by to visit. It's like he never left you, she said, watching as the dog followed Michael from room to room, always 3 steps behind, always alert, but at peace. Michael nodded. We were never really apart, just waiting. Rachel handed him a small photo album she'd made. These are from his time at the shelter. I thought you might want them. It's kind of a record of the years he spent waiting for you. Michael took the album with quiet gratitude, flipping through photos of a younger, stronger Coig sitting patiently in his kennel, playing with volunteers, lying alone on his bed, always with that same gaze fixed toward the door. You kept him alive, Michael said, looking up at her. Thank you for not giving up on him. Rachel smiled, though her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. He never gave up first. We just followed his lead. As the days turned into weeks, Michael found himself healing in ways no medication or therapist had managed. The VA sessions still continued, but now he had Coig beside him. The presence of his old partner steadied him, the familiar scent, the sound of his paws, the look in his eyes. It all anchored Michael to something pure, something that reminded him of who he was before the war, before the loss. One afternoon, while sitting on a park bench with Coig resting at his feet, a little girl approached cautiously. "Can I pet your dog?" she asked. Michael opened his mouth to answer but hesitated. He looked down at Koyig, who was watching the girl intently. His ears perked, but body relaxed. "Go ahead," he said softly. The girl knelt, giggling as Koyig leaned into her touch. "He's so soft. What's his name?" Michael smiled. "Koyig, that's a funny name," she said with a giggle. "It means brave in an old language we used in the service," Michael explained. "And he's the bravest I've ever known." That night, Michael sat at his kitchen table, flipping through old military records and photos, piecing together Koyig's early years from training to deployment. His hands trembled as he found the official adoption certificate he'd filled out before his deployment, the one that had been sent to his parents. It was real, all of it. Koyig had been his, from the very beginning until now. One photo caught his eye, Koyig standing tall in his service vest, eyes locked on Michael's in perfect sync. He pinned it to the refrigerator with a magnet and turned to find Koyig watching him, tail thumping lightly. "I promise," he said aloud, kneeling once more to hold the graying muzzle in his hands. "This time, I'm not going anywhere." Koyig pressed his forehead gently against Michael's, and in that simple gesture, everything unspoken was understood. A month later, Michael filled out a new set of papers. This time, it wasn't adoption paperwork. It was an application to become a certified trainer for military canine units transitioning into civilian life. He'd decided to use his experience to help other veterans and their canine partners reconnect or find new purpose together. Rachel was the first to hear about it. "You think you'll take in more dogs?" Michael looked down at Koyig, who was now sleeping peacefully on the porch in the sunlight, his face calm, his duty done. "Maybe," he said, "but none will ever be like him." Rachel nodded. "There'll never be another Koyig, but you'll give others a chance to be someone's Koyig." And so, in the same town where a forgotten dog waited 10 long years behind a shelter door, a new mission began. Not just one of reunion, but of redemption, healing, and hope. Because sometimes the ones we think are lost are really just waiting to be found again. And sometimes, the forever dog wasn't meant to wait forever, just long enough for the right moment. And the right person. Walking with Echo at first felt a little strange. Her gait was different. Light. Lifted. As if every step announced a new beginning. But each time she looked up at Michael with those questioning eyes, he felt that familiar softness. The kind he once saw in Koyig. Maybe some bonds change names and shapes, but the feeling, deep and rooted, remains. Each day settled into a quiet rhythm. Morning walks through the woods where the dew still clung to the grass. Echo always slightly ahead, ears twitching at every bird call. Afternoons were for training sessions. Nothing too strenuous, just enough to keep them both sharp. And evenings were reserved for stillness. The porch. The stars. Echo's head resting against his knee, her breath steady as if syncing with his. There were moments when Michael would catch himself calling her Buddy, the name he used for Koyig during missions. Echo never seemed to mind. She'd respond the same way. Tail flicking once, twice, sometimes 3 times. And Michael would smile, that quiet smile that said he was okay. One night, during a particularly bad storm, the thunder cracked so loud it shook the windows. Michael startled awake, heart racing. The dream had been vivid. Dust, gunfire, shouting. But before the panic could take hold, Echo was there. Not barking, not whining, just there, sitting by the bed, gaze locked onto his, waiting, grounding him. "You know what to do," he whispered, voice hoarse. Echo stepped forward, pressed her body gently against his side, and Michael let out a slow breath. Good girl. Just like him. That was the first night the nightmare didn't win. Word of Michael's journey with Koyig And now Echo continued to spread. More than just a heartwarming tale, it had become something larger. A symbol, hope in motion. The VA hospitals sent more invites. Support groups reached out. And slowly, Michael began to say yes more often. At one event, an older veteran approached with a photograph of his own war dog, long since passed. He didn't say much, just looked at Echo, then at Michael, and gave a slow nod. The kind of nod that carried years of unsaid things. Michael understood. Sometimes silence holds more truth than any speech. Echo, much like Koig before her, had begun to change others too. During one hospital visit, a young veteran who hadn't spoken in weeks reached out and gently touched Echo's fur. Just a small gesture, but it sparked something. The therapist later said that was the first time he'd made contact with anyone since arriving. Michael and Echo didn't perform miracles. They just showed up, again and again. And somehow, that was enough. Back home, the seasons shifted. Spring melted into summer, and the days grew longer. Michael found himself planting things in the backyard. Herbs, tomatoes, wildflowers. It wasn't really about gardening. It was about growth. About proving to himself that he could nurture something again. One evening, as the sun dipped below the trees and painted the sky in gold and lavender, Michael looked out at Echo stretched across the porch, her body rising and falling in a steady rhythm. He reached over, ran a hand through her fur. "You know," he said softly, "I used to think I'd never feel peace again." Echo's tail twitched. "But you and Koig, you taught me it's not about forgetting the pain. It's about finding something stronger to hold on to." Echo didn't move, just stayed close, present, steady. And in that stillness, under the wide Montana sky, Michael realized he wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. The light to return. That evening, after the visitors had gone and the sun had dipped behind the horizon, casting long, sleepy shadows over the porch, Michael sat quietly beside Koig. The cool breeze carried the scent of pine and the distant hum of crickets. The world felt still, suspended, as if honoring the sacred peace between man and dog. Koig rested his head on Michael's boot, eyes closed, breath deep and slow. The kind of rest earned only through years of devotion. Michael reached for the old leather collar he kept hung by the door. The first one Koig had worn when they were deployed overseas. Worn, scratched, and weathered, it still bore the faint imprints of the ID tags long removed. He turned it over in his hands, a symbol of battles fought, miles traveled, and a loyalty that had never once faltered. "You were never just a dog," Michael said softly. "You were my partner, my compass, my constant." Koig stirred at the sound of his voice, tail giving, a faint wag, as if he knew. Sleep came easily that night, wrapped in memories and soft fur and the comfort of knowing they had made something good out of the pain. Not perfect, not easy, but real and lasting. A few months later, the time came. Michael had known it was near. Koig's steps had become slower, his naps longer. But still, he fought to stay close, to complete the mission. On a crisp autumn morning, with the leaves just beginning to fall, Koig took his final breath, his head resting in Michael's lap, just as it had countless times before. There were no loud cries, no dramatic farewells. Just a long silence, broken only by the wind rustling through the trees. Michael buried him beneath the oak tree in the yard, their tree, marking the spot with a simple wooden plaque that read, "Faithful till the end." The house felt impossibly quiet afterward. The absence of paws on the floor, the gentle sighs from beneath the porch swing, each missing sound a silent echo of grief. But even in that silence, there was peace. Letters continued to arrive, stories from veterans who had adopted their own senior dogs, Updates from families inspired by Koig's journey. Drawings from children who had seen his photo in a classroom and called him a hero. His legacy, it seemed, was still alive and growing. One snowy afternoon, as Michael returned from town, he found a small package at the door. Inside was a framed photograph. Koig sitting tall next to the young veteran he'd helped not long before, both looking forward, eyes steady. A caption below, "Because of him, I found my way back." Tears came, not from pain, but from pride, from the knowledge that Koig's mission had continued beyond his final breath. In time, Michael welcomed another dog into his home. Not to replace Koig, that would never be possible, but to continue the work they'd started. A quiet rescue, named Nova. Timid at first, slowly learning trust with every shared sunrise. Together, they visited shelters and hospitals. They sat on the same porch. They walked the same paths through the woods. And every so often, Michael would catch a glimpse of Koig. Not literally, but in the quiet moments. A familiar glance, a comforting presence, a sense that he was still there, just beyond the edge of sight, watching, guarding, still on duty. Michael would whisper with a smile, "Because love like that doesn't end. It becomes part of us, woven into the bones, the breath, the way we carry forward." Koig's story wasn't just about a reunion. It was about resilience, about waiting when hope seems foolish, about believing when all signs say, "Don't." And above all, about the kind of loyalty that spans years, bridges silence, and carries us home. If this story moved you, consider adopting a senior dog. Share it with someone who's struggling. And remember, sometimes the ones we rescue us right back.